What's up guys, my name is Ace, and something that many of us Call of Duty players get quite annoyed with is the Riot Shield, because it can often really break up the flow of combat in various situations. Also, it can be quite annoying having people run around like turtles with that on their back, and it seems to be one of those things that's just very unpopular in Call of Duty. So in today's video, I'm going to be sharing a bunch of methods of countering the Riot Shields in this game, so they will no longer be an issue for you. Now with this, I tested every class item that I could think of that may be a good counter to the Riot Shield. So I'm going to be sharing what I found to be the best and most effective methods for killing Riot Shielders at range, as well as in close quarter situations. And then toward the end of the video, I just wanted to show a list of other things that I tested that I thought may work at least in some way, and they just simply didn't work effectively. And let's start it off with the best up-close methods of countering a Riot Shield. So if you're within like 10 meters of that Riot Shield user, for instance, what are the best methods of killing that person? Well, one fairly basic method that you can use is simply jump and melee in close quarters with a one-hit kill melee weapon. Now this can involve using like the breacher device muzzle, which will give you a one-hit melee with your gun in your hand. You can also have a throwing knife in your inventory, and when you do this, you will actually swipe with that knife for a one-hit melee, even if you're just using your gun in your hand. So again, that's another method. Or of course, you can use an actual melee weapon. And this is just a solid counter if you happen to be running those items on your class already. It doesn't really require you to go too far out of your way in order to counter them, but it can also be fairly risky since they can melee you back, and this doesn't work 100% of the time. Sometimes they'll look up with their Riot Shield quickly in order to counter that, and therefore it will actually block your knife attack. So it's definitely not the best method, but it is a method I at least wanted to share with you guys so you're aware that this is possible, and it can definitely work sometimes if you're really in a pinch. So the next option I've got for you guys is the Jack Limb Ripper, which is that underbarrel chainsaw that you can attach to many of the primary weapons in the game. And with this, as long as you're revving up the chainsaw and you're not using it as just a regular melee attack, you can cut directly through that Riot Shield and get yourself a kill on that. So not a bad option for up close and personal. However, the new Soul Render melee weapon, this is also an excellent counter to the Riot Shield if you use the heavy attack. If you use the light attack or the quick attack, that won't do anything. That'll behave just like any of the other melee weapons, where as long as they're protecting their body properly, you're not going to get a hit on them. However, if you use the heavy attack, no matter what they do, you're just going to completely ignore their Riot Shield as if it didn't exist. It puts you into that killing animation, and there is nothing they can do to counter it once that animation begins. So that can be an excellent option for dealing with Riot Shield users, but it does require you to really close that distance and get point blank to them. Which is why, if I'm looking at up close options, in my opinion, your best bet is the Purifier Underbarrel attachment. This is the Underbarrel Flamethrower attachment, because with this one, you have a range of 10 meters, and this completely ignores Riot Shield users. So you can just light them up with that, and they'll die just like anybody else will. And the nice part about this as well is it's just an attachment. You're not wasting your entire secondary slot just to counter that one player using a Riot Shield, for instance. It's simply one attachment slot that you have to swap out. And in my opinion, this is actually one of the most effective counters in the entire game to the Riot Shield users. In saying that though, with the Purifier, we are limited to that 10 meter range. Anything beyond that, it's useless. You can't do anything against the Riot Shield user. So let's get into some of my favorites that are capable of challenging the Riot Shield user beyond 10 meters. For many of these, they also work just fine in close quarter situations. It's just they have the versatility of also being able to attack at range. And with this, I've got 3 pieces of throwable lethal equipment that all work excellent against Riot Shield users. These are the Semtex, the Drill Charge, and the Thermite, because with all of these, it will stick to the Riot Shield, and it will essentially guarantee that that player will die. Now, I've heard some people mention the Drill Charge doesn't always get the kill on enemy players. However, in my custom match testing at least, it does kill every single time. So I don't know if there's a bug there. Maybe the Drill Charge isn't the best way to go. And another thing to point out is out of these 3, I actually find the Thermite to be the best just due to the throwing trajectory and the throwing speed. It seems you can throw that Thermite a little faster, and it has a flatter trajectory so you can aim it a little bit better if you're stretching your range out. And in my opinion, when it comes to a lethal piece of equipment on your class setup, the Thermite is definitely the best way to go. Next up, if you find yourself at a bit of a range, the RGL-80 is a solid choice. However, you don't want to be firing it directly at the Riot Shield because that will deal 0 damage to them. You don't want to get a direct impact. Instead, what you want to do with the RGL-80 is fire beside them or behind them. You want to be dealing that splash damage. And most Riot Shield users are going to be using EOD padding, so it is typically going to require multiple shots, but that's why we're going with the RGL-80, because you can get those multiple consecutive shots off reasonably quickly. And the nice thing about this counter is you don't have to be like pinpoint accurate. You don't have to hit them directly with it. You just have to kind of shoot in their general vicinity near their feet And it's quite an easy way to deal with Riot Shielders at a bit of a range. In saying all of that though, the best option in my opinion, if we're pushing out ranges fairly far, is the underbarrel drill charge attachment. This one is excellent because it does have a nice flat trajectory, so you can use it effectively even beyond 10 meters just fine. And all you have to do is hit them directly on the shield with this, and it's over for them. They are going to die even if they're using EOD padding. Again, this was all tested in custom games though, so there's a chance that this is also bugged out in public matches, but so far I haven't had any issues with an underbarrel drill charge killing them. And as a result, at range, I do consider this to be one of the better methods. And there we go. In my opinion, those are all of the best methods for taking out Riot Shield users. However, I did want to share a list of other things that I tested. You just might be curious, like, what about this? Why didn't this make the list? And we're going to start this list off with a couple things that can kind of somewhat counter a Riot Shield user. I just don't really consider them to be one of the best methods. And the first thing to mention here is the crossbow using either the thermite or explosive tipped bolts. These will counter Riot Shields to a small degree, and it's nice because you can use them pretty effectively at a longer range, but the problem with this is with both of these, it will require 2 shots to kill a Riot Shield user, and in a real in-game environment, it can often be difficult to find the time to put 2 shots into a Riot Shielder before somebody else takes you out. So technically, this is a counter to a degree, but it's just not a great counter in my opinion. I just thought it was worth a mention toward the end at least. And another thing I wanted to mention here that's a nice sort of soft counter to a Riot Shield is the shock stick. If you stick a Riot Shield user with a shock stick, it actually forces the third-person animation to tilt the shield a little bit and expose their hand. And from their perspective, it can be really difficult to judge where their shield is covering and what angle they should be looking at in order to counter you. So again, that's just another option for you that I don't consider to be one of the best, but it is something that technically is a soft counter to the shield. As for a bunch of other things that I tested that just didn't work against a Riot Shield, this is of course the armor-piercing ammunition. That doesn't do anything against a Riot Shield. Same thing with the anti-armor field upgrade. That does nothing to pierce the Riot Shield. Personally, I wouldn't mind if the field upgrade would allow you to pierce that, just because that's something that you're not going to have available all the time, and not very many people run that field upgrade to begin with, but that is just my opinion on that. Also, the other launchers in the game, I tested like the RPG and the Strela for instance, and just like with the RGL-80, if you hit the Riot Shield directly with these launchers, it deals 0 damage to that player, and therefore you could aim for that splash damage kill by shooting behind them or beside them, but the problem is, like I said earlier, they're likely going to be using EOD padding, and therefore it's going to require 2 hits to kill, and with the reload time of the Strela and the RPG, that's just not really a practical counter, unlike with the RGL-80, where you can get that second and even third shot off quite quickly. On a similar note to that, we also have the Breacher drone in the lethal category. That will also deal 0 damage to a Riot Shield user if you hit them directly. And again, the splash damage isn't going to do a whole lot if they're using EOD. Same thing with the 40mm underbarrel grenade launcher. That does nothing. I also tested sniper explosive ammo, shotgun explosive ammo, and shotgun incendiary ammo. None of those do anything to a Riot Shield user. And then finally, I was curious to see if tear gas did anything to their animations that would sort of force them to expose themselves a bit, just like with the shock stick. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen either. So there you go. Those are all the things that I tested against the Riot Shield, as well as a bunch of my personal favorite counters. And overall, as much as I'm not a fan of the Riot Shield in Call of Duty, and I do think the game would be better off without the Riot Shield, I like the fact that in Modern Warfare 3, we at least have quite a few counters to this that can really easily make a Riot Shield player on the other team practically useless against you. With many of these, you're essentially just looking at a free kill every time you run into a Riot Shield user, as long as you've got these equipped on your class setup. And with that, this is where I'm curious to hear from you guys in those comments down below. How are you feeling about the current state of the Riot Shield, as well as the counters to the Riot Shield in Modern Warfare 3? Do you think we now have enough viable counters to the Riot Shield to the point where we don't really need any more and it's balanced just fine? Or do you have a different opinion on this? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.